Welcome to Global Med Talks, the podcast where we embark on a journey through the world of medicine and beyond. I'm your host, Haider Ali, and I'm excited to be a guide as we explore a diverse range of topics, from sharing personal experiences to diving into medical stigmas, controversies, and beyond. In some episodes, I'll try to bring on guest speakers, I'll try to dissect hot button issues, and share practical tips for navigating both medical school and life. Yo guys, what's up? So today's episode we're taking a closer look at what it's really like to be a junior doctor in the UK. Joining me is an FY2 doctor who will share his journey, his challenges and the surprising differences between what they expected and what they've experienced, from long shifts and patient care to balancing personal life and professional growth. We're going to try to cover it all for you guys. So, whether you're a medical student dreaming of the future, a doctor navigating your own challenges, or just curious about life behind the hospital doors, then this episode is for you. Let's get into it. So, Adam, how are you? First of all, thank you for coming on to this podcast. I really appreciate it. So, if we could just start by talking about who you are, what do you do, and why you chose medicine in the first place, that would be great.
Alright, so Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Adam. I'm currently a foundation year 2 doctor here in Northwest in the UK. And I'll jump right into why I chose medicine. So from a young age, I was kind of persuaded to go into the medical field because my mom's a doctor. But I always liked actually math in school. Like, math was my favorite subject and the one I enjoyed the most. However, I thought the career pathway of like math was only really for engineering, but I didn't find that to be too too satiating. Whereas I saw in medicine that you can actually have like a more rewarding job, not just monetarily, but like you're able to make differences in people's lives. You're able to like have a very good time diagnosing people, managing acutely unwell patients. And for those reasons, I chose to go down the path of medicine instead.
Yeah, no, it is gratifying, just seeing when you can make a difference into patients' lives firsthand. I can understand why you chose medicine over engineering. Engineering was actually my first option as well, when I was about 16 years old. But again, I think for the similar reason of you just stated now, I decided to go down medicine. So, first of all, let's talk about your medical school experience, Adam. So, how was it like in medical school? Were there some challenges? Did you find it easy? And what was the hardest year for you?
I mean, the school itself was all right. I mean, the exams were obviously challenging, but I mean, the rest of the year, apart from exams, we're basically on our own, doing our own self-study, attending classes, yada yada yada. And I'd say the most difficult year for me, probably, I don't know, I'll just say the fifth year, final year, just because that means that like the final exams then were like the most heavily weighted and made the most difference. So those were the most stressful and high pressure exams. So I'd say the hardest part of med school is just getting over the stress and the high pressure of the exams. But the studying and content of the studying itself was never really like too much of an issue. It's not difficult, it's just more high volume.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
just need to put long-term studying like throughout the entire year, not to procrastinate. Do as many practice questions as humanly possible, and you should be successful.
Yeah, I mean, contrary to common thought, some people say that the first year of medical school is actually the hardest. And you're actually the first person that mentioned that the last year is actually the hardest. So that is actually quite interesting to hear. I mean, I can sort of understand with the exam pressure and everything. I remember you texting me and we were on phone calls when you were in your final year and you were, you were stressed out. You were visibly stressed out. And I was honestly like praying for you like every single day to so God can actually help you with your exams. So, I'm happy that you're finally a doctor now. So, what was the easiest part of medical school?
I mean, easiest. I mean, gosh, I don't know what to say. Easiest, but I mean, it's straightforward going through placements. I think a lot of like students at the start are afraid of going to placement and rotations in the hospital, but you soon realize that they're just purely there for your learning. There's hardly any assessment there, and the assessment that you do in placements is not like too difficult. So I say placement's the easiest part because you just get free learning and you could use it as wisely as you want to. So like for example, you find that you're not getting much from it and it's boring, you could just leave if you want and just do some self study.
It's like a pragmatic approach to learning, isn't it? And I feel like some people actually prefer that to just sitting down and just doing questions or learning. But
Yeah, I
some
mean
people
it's
do actually like questions as well.
it's it's different study styles, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
But I mean, it's good for hands-on approach and it's good for actual practice for like OSCEs, taking history and examinations of patients. But I guess I'm speaking more of the from the MCQ point of view, like for the written exams.
Hmm.
Like I don't think you're gonna learn too much on the job, like comparatively, if you were just to sit down and do some practice questions. You know.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's a friend of ours. I don't want to mention any names on this podcast, but he's a very good friend of ours. And what he did was basically just past medicine. There's loads of questions on past medicine stuff. So he just did loads of questions on that website, and he went to the placements. And the doctor that was supervising him, he said, "Oh, like you're way better than some of my junior doctors." And I was like, wait, how is that even possible? It's because like you actually learn so much from the questions as well. So I guess it's like what you said before, different learning styles. And if questions are better for you, then do questions. I mean, I guess it depends from person to person, doesn't it? Right. So let's jump into life as a doctor. So first of all, how was the transition from medical school to being an FY1 doctor?
I mean, at the start, everyone's obviously nervous because, it's a big responsibility gap going from no responsibility at all as a medical student to going on the wards and having to arrive every day. 8 a.m. starts. You can't be late. You got to prep the ward rounds. You got to prescribe everything. There's so many responsibilities on your shoulders now. So
Yeah.
it's a scary thing at the start for everyone. But as you go through, you just you get on with it, and you try to get better at your work, and you try to understand how to do your jobs as efficiently as possible and how to work with your seniors as efficiently as possible. And you meet a lot of different doctors throughout the hospital, like the juniors and seniors who are really nice and who can help you out a lot. And
Mhm.
I think that's probably the most helpful thing to overcoming the stress of the start. For me, I
Teamwork, isn't
remember I started out in a medical rotation, and there's a SHO with us, and she was very helpful. Like in the first few weeks, she helped us out with everything, because I didn't know how to prescribe everything. I was like checking BNF for every single drug. You know what I mean? Like paracetamol every time, bro.
Yeah, I mean that's a common misconception people have, especially us as students. We have this expectation that doctors know everything, like they're really smart, they know what they're doing, and I feel like that's not the case. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like as a junior doctor, you know enough knowledge to not kill the patient. Like, I feel like there's a lot of doctors out there who have just graduated that really do not know what they're doing at all. So I guess teamwork really does come into play.
I'll say about that the fear of not knowing much, you'll get over that when you realize that actually as a FY1 doctor, you're like very, very heavily supported. You're hardly in the position where you're on your own and you have no one to speak to.
Hmm.
So if you ever really have concerns and you're asked to do something you're not sure about, there's always someone that you can ask for advice, you know?
Right. Okay. Has there ever been times where you're alone in a ward and you have to manage the ward by yourself? Because I feel like that is the case, but I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the rotation you're at. For one of my surgical rotations, but this was when I was like the third rotation of mine. So I was quite an experienced FY1 doctor by then. I was like covering the surgical ward all by myself. There was a load of different jobs, different patients were unwell, but I guess the important skill you pick up early on in foundation is that you learn how to prioritize tasks. So task
Right.
prioritization, that's probably the most important skill that you'll learn as a FY1 doctor.
Hmm.
And then through that, when you have a list of like 10 jobs, you have to pick the one that's most important to the patient who's most unwell and manage them first and foremost and forget everything else.
Right.
Because
Okay.
if that unwell patient gets delayed in care and they deteriorate, that will be
Mhm.
on your shoulders for not going to assess that patient. immediately.
Yeah, like work does pile up, doesn't it? I'm assuming, especially like in the NHS when there's shortages and stuff. Oh yeah, bro, can you mention something about the workload and how the NHS is in a potential crisis right now? Because the media, I feel like the media does exaggerate a lot of things. I don't think it's that bad, but how is the NHS crisis affecting you as a junior doctor, or if there even is a crisis at all?
So for me, I mean, I currently work in A&E, and I mean, there's a massive problem with staffing. You know, like
Okay.
our nurses are like there's meant to be one nurse per like the 16 patients in the waiting room.
Wow.
Instead, there's like one or two nurses for 70 patients or more. So they're like double or triple seeing the patients that they need, and like there's not enough people willing to take the shifts. Like even if they increase the rates, like I asked and they said that there's not enough nurses actually willing to take those shifts because they're so difficult and they just don't have the amount of experienced nurses to be able to cover for A&E. So it's
Mm.
actually very challenging in A&E with a nursing situation. For the doctors, I mean, it's all right. I think the doctors have been pretty well staffed here in my A&E, but nurses in particular, they're very understaffed. And it actually makes a very big impact on patient care and waiting times and the ability for us to be able to see and treat patients. I'll give you an example. So if I come and I see a patient who hasn't had bloods on them, haven't had ECG, I would have to sit there and do them myself. And then afterwards, I would have to go and ask for the nurse to give the treatment or that I prescribed. Let's say I prescribed IV fluids. I would have to go and ask the nurse to do it. And then, depending on how busy they are and how I don't know how nice they are and if they listen or not, then they will do it in a timely fashion. But if not, the patients can wait easily up to like 2 3 hours to just to get a prescribed medication that I gave them.
Oh, bro,
Unless it's like an
that can.
emergency medication,
Mhm,
let's say they're having ACS and they need the stat aspirin,
mhm.
then they usually give the stat meds pretty quick. But aside from that, the normal like other medications we give and stuff that can wait, that can be quite delayed. So if not for these delays and like due to like the shortage of nurses staff, I would have seen a lot more patients. You know,
Mhm.
I think that probably like I could see probably 1.5 times as many patients if I never had to worry about like whether my patient will actually receive the treatment that I prescribe or not, and whether this patient still needs bloods or not. For
Yeah.
example, in Canada and America, when a patient is prescribed a medication, the doctor just does it and he doesn't. They don't really think about whether it's going to be administered. That's on the nurse, you know. Or if the patient needs bloods, the doctor will just request it. They
Mhm.
won't actually do that themselves. They just do it and they forget about it. But here in the UK, we have to do everything by ourselves. I mean, we
Right.
don't administer medication, but we need to make sure that it is administered. We need to like tell the nurse to do it because if we don't, then it'll get missed.
Right.
And the
Okay.
same with bloods. Like if the bloods aren't done, the nurses are like too busy. They'll always say, "Sorry, we're too busy," and then I have to do it myself.
Right. Okay. I mean, yeah, no, emergency medicine is quite an area where things can go wrong very easily. I remember I was in a placement one time in my second year of university in the UK hospital, and what happened was I was in the emergency department. And I was sat in the waiting room because the doctor was saying, okay, wait here and I'll come and collect you in about 10 minutes. And after about 5 minutes of waiting, I hear some patient just shouting like mad. He was like a madman. I'm like, bro, what's happening? I really want to go find out what's happening, but I feel like I should stay put because if something happens, then, it's my fault. But anyway, so what I heard was the guy, he had a pencil in his hand and he was pointing at the nurse and he was, oh, I want to see a doctor now. Let me see a doctor now, or else I'm gonna stab this in your head. I was like, yo, what is happening? That was crazy. So, I mean, so then apparently then security guards came, like rugby tackled the guy onto the floor and just dragged him out. And I was like, yo, that is the first time something's bad has ever happened in a hospital placement that I've personally witnessed myself. Because I thought this stuff only really happens in the movies and the TV shows, but holy, but when like you said, if you have to wait 3, 4 hours, then it's inevitable. People are gonna be distressed and they are gonna uh, attack, or they're gonna act in certain ways. So yeah, emergency medicine is it's a crazy field, man. It's a crazy field.
I will
Um,
say it's not. It's I don't know. You're getting 3 4 hours. That's pretty good for us. The average is between like 8 to 16 in
eight to
my hospital.
sixteen.
Yeah,
Yo,
and in January it was like the worst time of year. It was like 23 hours.
no way.
So I had a patient who one of my patients I was seeing. He waited 18 hours and he had ACS. Can you imagine?
What's it? Acute coronary syndrome.
Yeah.
Ah, wow. But don't they like speed up the process for these patients, or like?
I mean, they do to a certain point until they have 150 patients, and like a lot of them are unwell. So you got to pick the most
Wow,
unwell ones to see first, right?
that's actually crazy, man. That's actually no wonder these protests are happening about NHS, man. They need to fix it up. But anyway,
And
so
also,
okay, go
also
on. Sorry.
regarding the security, I will say that like I work in A&E now, and bro, there's police and security on the daily everywhere, bro. There's always
There has to be.
patients
There has to
with
be, you
security
know.
or police all the time.
Honestly, there has to be. Right. So, bro, I had another question for you about work-life balance. So, how easy is it to maintain a work-life balance as an FY2 doctor?
I think it's all right. I mean, depends on the rotation you have, and because some of them like don't have nights. For example, in my FY1 year, only medicine had nights,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the other ones are just days and like long days. So I think the shifts are all right. I mean, like after you get home, you forget about everything. Then you have like a decent amount of time at home to either like do any hobbies you like, going to the gym, for example, play some sports, or like study if you need to. For example, if you're
Yeah.
doing an exam. So I think there's a decent amount of free time that you have throughout foundation.
Yeah. So, do you personally have enough time to pursue hobbies or spend times with family and friends, or not that much?
Yeah, I do. Everyone does. If you think about it, like the average shifts are around 8 or 9 hours. So
Mm-hmm.
you get home at 5 or 6 p.m. You're gonna go to sleep at like 11. So you have 5 hours to do whatever you want.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So
And
yeah,
so, how different is your daily routine compared to what you imagined it would be like? So, as a student, we all have this sort of like expectations of what our daily life is going to be like as a doctor, and how different is that to what your actual daily life is like?
I mean, I imagined that I would be a lot more like active and energetic. I thought I'd be able to come home, go straight to the gym, but I
Yeah,
don't. I don't know. It's a little bit difficult going to the gym when you're working 9 hours a day,
yeah,
tiring
true,
shifts.
true,
You go on
true.
the bus. So that requires a lot more motivation.
Right. So, so you mentioned that you do have long hours and it can be quite stressful, I guess, depending on the specialty that you're in. But so how do you cope with the mental challenges?
I think the most important thing is to obviously, firstly, religion. Praying, making dua.
Hmm.
Apart from that, I think it's good to have like some like physical support, and it doesn't have to be like in person. Like for me, I my family's abroad, and
Hmm.
calling them every day, talking to your parents about the stressful days you had at work, just having someone to talk to about your hard days at work. I think
Yeah.
that's probably the most helpful thing.
Hmm. And do you think
Uh,
the NHS provides enough support for doctors' mental health? Or...
they do, but like no one really takes it. Like they do the free counseling services or whatnot, the mindfulness techniques, whatever. In
Mhm.
reality, what they need to do is like make the the schedules less busy. That's why everyone now is taking like less than full time, doing 80% or 60%. It's not that common for people to do full time anymore. Most people are actually doing less than full time.
Okay, so moving on to the next question that I feel like is pretty important, and a lot of people ask themselves this as well because of the media and stuff. Do you think doctors are overworked and underpaid, and especially the payment part. I want to know if the payment balances with the amount of work that you're doing.
Well, I mean, if I could answer in one word, it would be no. But if you get, I'll give you an example. A surgeon works for like 15 years to become a consultant, works tirelessly super hard, and at the end of the day, they all get 100K base salary.
Hmm.
Do you really think 100K is worth it for 15 years of very hard dedication work where
To
they
be honest
give
with
their
you,
lives to the field?
I don't think it is, because if you look at America, they're getting paid like loads. Like there's some doctors out there in America that are millionaires. So,
I
compare that to the
I knew
UK,
someone
where
who
you're
was
pretty
like
low.
just finished residency for anesthetics in America. The first year, like as an attending or a consultant, she got 700K.
700K.
The first year out of like as a consultant. Whereas here we get
Wow.
100K, which is like roughly 150 American. So
Gosh.
you tell me, do you think that we're we're underpaid? You tell me.
So what are your future plans? Do you want to go to America? Are you planning to stay in the UK? Like, what's your future plans?
I want to finish training either in the UK or America or somewhere. And then
Mhm.
after training, I want to probably go to the Middle East or something to live there. Because there they pay well. It's a Muslim country.
Mhm.
Food's good. I don't
Yeah.
know. Food's halal. Family
Absolutely.
friendly place. There's no
Food's
alcohol
a
or
big thing,
drugs.
man. Food's a big thing. Right, okay, guys, thank you so much for listening. That wraps up another episode of Global Med Talks. A huge thank you for our guest Adam for sharing his insights and experiences as an FY2 doctor. It's always good to hear the realities of life in medicine. And to everyone who's listening, if you enjoyed the episode, please give us a follow and drop a comment. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.